Kingshay are independent dairy specialist, established 25 years ago. We're based down in Somerset near Glastonbury, but work with dairy farmers all over the UK, providing independent research, a lot of it based on the trials we do, and monitoring services. The key areas within the business are our membership. So we have a farmer membership to which we send out a lot of technical materials and reports. We offer consultancy. John's one of our key consultants. We operate a number of services, particularly the Dairy Manager costing service that you'll hear a lot more about this evening. So these are some of the technical reports that we've written and published in the last couple of years. Again, you won't see the results of these in the farming press. They are carried out for the membership and published to the membership, and then we offer further advice and consultancy off the back of them. Also the dairy costings, which we've been running for over 20 years now. Basically, you can see, recording data, but actually reporting it in a useful manner with charts and trying to make data fun. Firstly, on a world level, you'll all have seen this chart here. GDT, trade auction, milk price auction, and what's happening over recent years with volatility. That's the reality of what we've dealt with volatility over the last virtually 10 years. And obviously the trough we're at the moment is we're in one of the worst troughs, well, the worst it's been since 2009. Anyone's predictions going forward, the one thing they will say is volatility is here to stay. This current situation of where we are, why, what's caused it? Basically supply and demand. 2015, global production was up 5% and demand down 2%. Russia reducing imports from EU due to financial sanctions. Downturn in China. Only a relatively small amount of world milk is traded. This global price does impact the price of all dairy products, virtually all dairy products. Obviously, although within this country quota has been pretty irrelevant for the last 5+ years, for a number of countries within Europe, it was very much restricting their production. So since quotas went in April last year, milk production's increased. So the top line there is the 2015 production relative to the 3 previous years. So the latest figures here for January show production 620 million litres, or just over 5% up on the previous year. More milk on the market without somewhere anywhere for it to go. In terms of where that milk's come from, this chart of countries across Europe looks at the increase in production within each country in the April, so the post-quota period, April 15 to January 16, relative to the previous years. Don't worry too much about the figures, but the darker the blue, the higher the increase in production on last year. So you can see darkest blue is Ireland, milk production 16% up on last year. And that's obviously within their spring calving season. They were restricted on production through February and March. Other significant increases are the Netherlands at 10%. Some countries have reduced. The yellow block, Sweden, etc., have reduced production slightly. But if you look at what's contributed to the extra milk, over half of the extra production has come from Netherlands and Ireland. Production in UK has increased slightly, overall 3% up on the same period last year, but it's on a European scale, it's Ireland and the Netherlands that are having the biggest effect. Okay, putting it down to a UK level, again these are some trends from our Dairy Manager costing service looking at herd size yield trends over the past 10 years. Again, familiar picture that you'll have seen elsewhere, gradual increase in herd size, yield increased steadily to about 2012, and has reasonably plateaued since then. The key bit, and one thing we're going to sort of focus on a bit later, is the milk from forage. Milk from forage sort of fairly steady at around 2,500 litres until about 2012. Then the combination of a couple of poor summers, 2012 and 13, combined with a period of high milk prices, encouraged people to feed more, often house cows more, to get more milk when milk prices were high. That did have an impact of reducing milk from forage. We are now seeing, particularly this winter, increases in milk from forage as lower milk price encourages people to take cost out of the system. Increased production when milk prices were high in 2014. Quite valid reasons: feed more, probably house cows more to increase yield. Fine when the milk price was high, but when the milk price was low, the challenge is then take cost out of the system. If we look at milk prices, you see middle line there is average milk price. Again, no surprise, that is the trend we've seen in recent months, falling average milk price. But what we are experiencing, again, is a much wider range and a big split in the industry between those on a cost of production price that have had a pretty modest fall in price and still are receiving prices around 30p a litre, and those that are on a manufactured price or some without a milk contract at all that have seen prices fall more significantly. So middle blue line is the average. Lines either side are the top 25% and the lowest 25% of milk prices. And that's 25% bands. If we look at extremes, some are obviously now looking at prices of 16, 15, 16p. What we're seeing now, say, the range between these groups of the bottom 25 and the top 25% was around 4p 2 years ago. Now it's over 10p. 50% of the milk market is liquid, but what we try to do is sort of estimate the split of that, of how much of that liquid is on a cost of production. So we estimate 15% of the total market is on a cost of production basis. So if you're lucky enough to be one of those herds, obviously you've got a stability of price and stability to sort of plan forward and look at controlling costs. For the rest on liquid, facing market value, obviously within these challenging times, realistically the market is not delivering what it costs to produce that milk, particularly if the buyer's insisting on all year round supply, then the value is not there in the market at the moment. On the manufactured side, if you look at sort of farming systems, someone producing for a manufacturer contract is probably looking at would be looking at a lower cost system. That would typically be seasonal calving. The whole processing structure is not really set up to properly deal with that insufficient volume. In recent years, more and more processors have been insisting on all year round production because it's simple for them. If you look at Ireland, they're obviously focusing on increasing production, and it's their plan to increase production by 50% by 2020, and they're over 35% there already. But they've done that by investing in processing capacity. So they maintain the farming system as the most efficient for their climate. A milk buyer, if they wanted level production, they should be able to, rather than insist on all year round calving, say have one spring calver and 2 autumn calvers. They should be ought to be able to take the most efficient systems and plan that together. The nature of the industry, and such a split of a small number on cost of production and the majority on a more market-related price, we've never had that. That's the sort of range in prices. as is not something the industry sort of coped with before. What is the sort of predictions going forward? Again, sort of figures you'll have seen plenty of times before. You know, long-term world demand is predicted to substantially increase. Okay, so we've all heard about, you know, world population increase to 8 billion by 2025 as prediction. From our point of view, the important bit within that is the amount of people that within a kind of consumption in sort of, you know, emerging markets, and people that are moving from a sort of bottom to a more middle class that will want to consume products such as milk and dairy products. This chart from IDF, International Dairy Federation, basically looks at the value in milk products from 2010 to 2025. And as you can see, the biggest increase there is in emerging markets. The key thing, it's not just in China. There's predicted 30 trillion increase in consumption, not just in China, but in India, Brazil, and a whole host of other countries. That gives some comfort that, you know, these predictions are not reliant on one country and any associated political impacts of one country, as we've seen in Russia. What is the milk price going to do? Because that's what everyone wants to know. Well, you know, rather than say what I think, let's look at what the experts say. Okay, so whether you call them experts or not it's up to you. This is a recent prediction from the EU, from EU economists. So basically, you've got the green line, so that's milk price to date, and then you've got their predictions, you know, and they'll run a whole host of models, which will give a wide range of predictions. So basically, you can see they think the milk price is going to be somewhere within that band. The reality is there's a huge variation in predictions, and if they try and be precise, they're not accurate. The key point is, whatever predictions you listen to, whether it's EU, Rabobank, you know, latest out last week prediction from Rabobank is that there'll be some upward pressure on prices early next year. I'll put a but in there. Recent predictions have not been realised. We know prices are going to be volatile. Long term, there is a positive upward trend. So long term, the prospects are good. Within that, there's going to be a huge amount of volatility. The UK is relatively efficient within the rest of the EU. Now, I'll just explain these figures. These are figures from European Dairy Farmers Group, so they're actual recorded figures of actual farm production. See the UK in a band here. The yellow dot is the average cost of production, so the average break-even milk price of each country. These are in euro cents a litre or euro cents a kilo, but it's the relative figures that matter. So across the EU, the average cost of production is just under 40 euro cents a kilo. The UK is relatively efficient at about 33, and is below virtually every other country other than Ireland. So, you know, not surprisingly, Ireland with their grass-based system do have a slightly lower cost of production. But within the UK, there is quite a range in cost of production between herds, and that represents the relatively wide range of systems that we have in this country. The Dutch have been constrained by, very much constrained by quotas in recent years, but they are very ambitious. The concentration of livestock, is very high. The systems are predominantly housed, with a little bit of grazing, but most of the actual ration is an inside silage ration. In the last 4 or 5 years of quotas, a lot of them increased cow numbers. Okay, so they increased cow numbers and let yield fall. Okay, now that quotas have gone, they've increased yield, But they've effectively gained another quota because this year they had quite heavy phosphate limitations imposed on them, which actually imposed a cow quota, realistically. But in that time, a lot of them had increased cow numbers in recent years, so they can now push up yields. So effectively, they have spent the money. They've spent the money investing in good cow, very high quality cow housing, and now they need a return on that. And their method of getting return is to produce more milk to spread those overheads. So effectively, they're producing milk at a very marginal cost, and providing there's a bit of a margin in there, they'll do it. If you look at the kind of that system and the borrowing levels, of Holland and indeed Denmark, if you see anything written up looking at farm efficiency, what I basically say is, Denmark has the most efficient dairy farms. Yes, they do, but they also have by far the highest level of borrowing. Within UK, we do have the potential to produce relatively cheap milk, and survive through these difficult times. Whereas, the likes of the Danes, how badly they'll get hit in this crisis, I'm not sure. But if you go back when the overall financial crisis came in, roughly a third of Danish farmers went bust because they'd invested so much. We are in a relatively strong position, and there is the potential to produce milk cost effectively. But realistically, those factors are out of your control. The key is to manage what's in your control. And where to start, as I said, for a lot of this, I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted here. How do you plan your way forward? Well, you can't plan until you know where you are. So know where you are to plan where you're going. And from that, I definitely suggest that there is a positive future for efficient businesses. There is a market for milk, and the most efficient businesses should be able to ride through the difficult times to make profits during the better times. In terms of planning forward, there's lots of things that need to consider, and we're only going to focus on just a very small number today. Any business review, it is important to consider all options. Every business should have a clear strategy. Family businesses should have a set succession plan. For some, an exit plan will be the right thing to do. And as I said, it would, for any business that's considering going out, it's much better to have a plan and a managed exit from dairying than have it forced upon. The beauty of the UK dairy industry is there's a whole range of different systems. The complication is that each system requires a different management. Low input systems, during these difficult times will be on efficient grass utilisation, good fertility, and just minimising costs, cutting back costs to the key. On the other extreme, high yields, focus there is on feed efficiency, herd health, and maintaining that output to give those litres to spread those overheads, providing that output can be reduced with a profitable marginal litre. The majority of herds lie somewhere in between those two, and this is the area that we're really going to focus on shortly. Is just some examples of what can be done within those systems.